Hello friends, myself Anup. Welcome to TechiesTrack. Today we are going to talk about why microservices, what is microservices and why we are using it. Okay, recently we have talked to multiple candidates in the interview also, and I found most of the people are not able to answer fully and not to satisfy why we are using microservices. So I thought let me cover all these things in the 7 steps, and that might help you. So before understanding the microservice, first we need to understand what is monoliths and how the microservices is helping to solve those problems. So let's talk about monoliths first. Okay, so let's say in so far in the applications, and recently all the big companies like Netflix, Amazon, Google, Uber, all is using microservices. Even the smaller companies are started adopting after the success. So we will talk what benefits we are getting out of these things and how to implement that. Before implementing, what we need to consider. So far there are 3-tier architecture which is popular while developing an application. You mostly will be having one UI layer, you may be having one business layer, okay, in any application, or service layer, or you may be having one data layer, or database. I'll say data. These are the 3 high level layer, and you can define whatever technology you use, but these are the high level structure in monoliths. So general if I say in the diagram, let's say this is the user, and you may have one big box here where you will have one layer as a UI layer. Let's say this could be implemented in Angular or JSP or anything. Then you may have something like order, catalog as a one component. You may have shipment, you may have billing, you may have user management, and something like that. Then you will talk to one database which is shared DB. It could be Oracle or SQL Server, whatever. Okay, so this is the general architecture in monoliths. So this client is talking to, or client could be your another machine. Okay, they are talking to one of the UI layer which internally talk to any of these component. They talk to database and fetch the data and send back to the client. That is the general architecture we used to have in monoliths. So what happens over the time, we started facing problem in this architecture, that hey, you are deploying this full this whole thing into one component. Let's say general architecture, I'm talking in the Java term. So let's say you are deploying one var file and you are deploying in Tomcat or JBoss, right? So you have to build every time this full services order, shipment and all, but you don't have anything okay, change is only here, so why not to deploy only this part? Why to deploy it again, the full application? When you redeploy the full application, there is chances you may get the problem in another module also, so your full application stability becomes the toss sometime. Okay, so there are so many issues like this. This is one of the example I'm giving. So what microservices are doing and how it is solving, and I'll cover all the problems and all the benefit of the microservices in the 7 points. You may can add you may add or listen few more points, but they are will be covered in these 7 points. So the same service I will try to depict in the microservices. So let's say this is microservices. Okay, so you have same user and maybe computer. Let's say I'm not making it very complicated architecture of microservices. I'm just making it simple. Let's say you have one API gateway. I'll tell you in another video what is API gateway, but you just assume any request is coming to here, and this guy has the responsibility to make it forward. Okay, so it's kind of router. Then you may have a separate service called order, catalog. Okay, user is coming here, getting the response here, and this guy has separate DB called like I'll say DB. Okay, then you may have user management as a separate service. It's separate DB or schema, however you want to define. Then you may have billing. This also have separate database, and you are getting the response. User is calling. So what happened? The same problem I defined into multiple services. They have their own database and life cycle, and this gateway is like, managing this whole life cycle and sending the request back. I haven't included this UI layer, but if you want, you can add here also the UI layer. From UI layer you are going to get a gateway, but I'm just talking about the Java services as of now. Okay, we'll talk about discovery and all in another video, but right now I'm just trying to how the problems we are solving using microservices. So now let's talk about what problem. So first is the 7 points. Let's talk about those 7 points, and then you will understand how they are. So number 1 is scaling. Okay, so what do you mean by scaling? Okay, let's say in Diwali time or some special festival time, you may get lot of requests to for a lot of orders are coming in the sale, right? So you want to increase this particular module with 10 instance. Okay, you want to scale this, but others like billing is fine, shipment is fine, or user management is also fine, but you want to handle this request with more. You want to add more server capacity. Okay, so how you are going to do that? There is no provision in this what you can do horizontal scaling. What you can do, you can add one more hardware box and then add this particular thing. But in microservices, and then what will happen, let's say you added 2 box, you don't know how the capacity will be increased. You want here more capacity, not here and here, but your resources are actually wasted. But here what you can do in the microservice, because it's a one separate component, so microservices are nothing but independently can be deployed, can be maintained, can be monitored, and can be developed. All these things can be managed independently. That is the full life cycle of the application can be done independently. That is microservice, nothing else. Okay, so if you want to scale this particular thing, order management, here you can do 10 instance here only. There is no impact on any other application, and it's very easy to do. So that's the one of the bigger advantage of using microservices. Then you have the code quality. So nowadays the code quality, or you can say, and complexity of app. Nowadays code quality is measured with different metrics, and if your code is not 100% covered in the coverage and many matrices, then it becomes very problematic over the time to manage that, right? So you need a better code quality. And if you have this kind of architecture, what happens, everything is getting in one repository. So there is one code repository which is holding all this, and if you want to change this, there is chances you have dependency on this. So because the configuration are at one place, right? So there are so many challenges, and then when the new person join, it becomes very difficult to change. So he touch this module, but there is chances it affect billing also. When you touch the user management, this session get breaks, and it affects all the modules. But here you don't have to worry about this. These two applications, let's say you are changing here, these are like an independent application, so there is no impact at all. So it's very hard to very easy to manage in this way, but it's very hard to do this way. Even when the new user is coming or new developer is also coming, he can do. Even the testing of these individual module is very easy. Here the full box testing you need to do, so it will take more time, right? So that's why we can say the complexity of application and code quality will improve in the microservices. In this kind of scenario, you don't have proper ownership. So let's say ownership. Okay, so what do you mean by ownership here? So let's say in this particular module, there are 5 modules. We have defined developers to each module, but still there is chances whenever the integration point happens, they don't take the proper ownership. In this kind of architecture, it's a new style of architecture, so where everybody is responsible for their own boundary, and whatever integration happens, they are responsible on their own boundary, right? So it's very easy to blame, or not the blame is not correct word, but you can say the responsibility to define who is responsible for what database, if problem is coming, who is going to check and where. So all these things can be done easy way in microservices than monoliths, right? Okay, so after ownership, the next is failure of cascading handling. Okay, so you can say failure handling. So what will happen, let's say in the services is calling each other through synchronous way. So what happens, one or two services is down because of any reasons, so there your full services may get all the effects, the full application get crashed and it have full effect. But in the microservices, how it can help, one component is down, still you can continue, there is no impact on any other services, as well as there are ways the circuit breaker kind of design pattern, where even this service is down, you can continue serving the request, and you can open the circuit breaker, and once you are stable, then you continue start getting the values from database. So Netflix also implemented Histric as a new circuit breaker, and there are so many other, but we'll talk in different video about the circuit breakers. So it handles that circuit breaker thing. The fifth is language independent, you can say. Okay, or different implementation. Okay, so you got a scaling, you have code quality, which cover your code quality, you have ownership, you have failure of cascading, you have language independent. Okay, so what will happen, let's say you in this particular scenario, let's say you develop all these services in Java, and tomorrow you want to change these two into .NET and this one in Python. It's very hard to do this kind of change. And in technology, after 1 year or 2 year, you may need to change in different technology, because its evolution is very fast. You may 1 year before you are using let's say in UI you are using Angular, but now people are using React. So all these kind of changes is very difficult to do in monolithics. But if you go here, you can have this component in Java, this component can be Oracle, here you can use Python, here you can use Cassandra, here you can use .NET, something like that. So it's up to you, it's totally up to you how you can define those components. The one more point, I need to have it up, but yeah, the agility, or fast to ship the product, or you can say deploy. Some people can write fast change management, fast agility in the application. So as you know, here, even if you are changing one line of code, you have to build everything, and let's say you got one change here, two change here, three change here, all is done in 2 days. But there is one change which is dependent on third-party libraries, which can block your full shipment or full deployment. So in this kind of problem may come in the monoliths, but in the microservices, even in that kind of scenario, you may deploy these two components. This might not require a deployment, so you can decide based on your business requirement. So it's very easy to do in the microservices. So easy to fast deployment and processing. The last one is about DevOps. So it's very popular nowadays. You maybe use Jenkins pipeline, right, or Jenkins build, where you just push your code into or you build it, and then automatically Jenkins trigger that, it go into different pipelines, and it push the code into UAT or production or wherever you want to do. So that is the first development is happening in microservices world. So far, like what used to happen, you were having two different team. One is dev team, one is operations team. So dev team is responsible only for development, operation team is responsible once the development is done, whatever happen in the production, they were responsible. So there are challenges of collaboration and responsibility. So sometime overlap kind of scenario, it's unnecessary operation. So then DevOps solve this problem, and this says the developer who develop the code can push the code into production or UAT environment. So you don't need operation as a separate team, but it can be part of your team. So in agile and all, feature team and your function team, so that way it can solve the problem. But that's the develop. So I'll say these are the 7 major points. In microservices, very easy to scale, very easy to maintain the code quality, and complexity of application become easy. You have separate ownership. You can handle the failure of the services very easy way. You have a language independent, you can develop the code in any language. You can develop the code faster, and you can deploy. So even there are companies who every day release in the production. So that kind of model you can achieve, and that model can be achieved using DevOps. So DevOps is very easy to adopt in microservices. These are 7 points you should remember while you are talking about the microservices. Why microservices? What is microservice? Now microservices is not silver bullet where it can solve all the problems. What you need to do before adopting the microservices, you need to find out what is your business requirement. Okay, so before defining this, micro doesn't mean its size. Micro means it's not technical size, it's business, dividing your component into different business applications. So let's say while defining the microservices, you need to do a couple of things. Talk to your BA or product owner. What exactly is the business context you can define? Can it be separate? Then you need to have one architecture where he can help you what should be the architect, or if you are the architect, then think about those lines. And then you should, before starting all this, you should need domain driven design. So there is a book called author from Eric Evans, who wrote nice books on the domain driven design. He talks about how you'll define your domain. Domain is nothing but your business, what domain you are playing. So order could be your one domain, which is the context, the full product can be ordered and you can manage it. User management can be one domain. So you need to define all the domain here. So that way you can define the microservice. So I hope I have covered most of the things in this short video, and we can we'll be creating a couple of more video what is the service oriented architecture, what is microservice architecture, what is monolithics and microservices that we already covered, and what are the benefits from microservices we are getting, or you can say what are the problems in monolithics which microservices are solving. So thank you for watching, and please write your comment if you have more questions on the microservices. We'll come up with the more videos on the microservices. Thank you very much. Thank you.